It's been a few months since I've bought this super awesome cobblestone village mat from Deep Cut Studios. Do you know how many times I've set up a cool scene using this awesome battle mat? 0. So what time is better than the present than to jump in and make an awesome scene out of this awesome battle mat? Let's go. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Garmin. This, of course, is the Storycraft Society. And this week, you already heard it. I have this awesome cobblestone village battle mat. I'm gonna set it up and make a cool scene out of it. Why? I have all this terrain back here. Sometimes, you know, when you're a crafter and you make stuff, sometimes it's just really fun to just set it all out and play with your toys. That's not a glamorous way to say it, but it's true. And so that's what we're gonna be doing this week, just because it's gonna be fun. A couple of things that I will say about this mat. The first thing is I'm a dodo bird, and I bought a way too big of mat for my table. I don't know why I thought 4 foot by 6 foot is the right way to go when my table is actually 8 foot by 5 foot. I guess if I want to cover the whole thing, that's great, but most of the time I'm using these battle mats for D&D, and that is just way too big. It doesn't give my players any room to be on the table, but that's even more of a reason to do it right now because this isn't for a game, this is just for fun. The next thing is that I typically use Frontline gaming mats. This is the first Deep Cut Studios mat that I've bought. And wow, do I think that this is one of the best battle mats that I've ever used. I love the material that it's made out of. I love the stitching on the edges. And just to be clear, I think that that was an option when I ordered it, but I don't think I selected it and they sent it to me anyway. So I don't know if that was just a fluke or what, but those are my two thoughts about this ridiculously oversized mat. We're gonna see if I have enough terrain to fill it up. Hopefully I empty out these back walls back here and let's get her rolled out, huh? So now with this ridiculously huge mat out on the table, very little extra gaming space other than what's on the mat, the next thing that I need to do is I need to figure out, you know, the general layout of the thing. I have all these little like city blocks that will kind of inform where I place my buildings, but that's what's next. Buildings. I'm gonna play around for a while, just putting buildings in different places, seeing what looks the coolest, seeing what feels the coolest, and then from there, that will help to inform what I should do with other things like trees and scatter terrain that'll fit in later down the line. Let's jump into that, shall we? Also, this is worth mentioning, buildings are my favorite part because this thing goes from looking like nothing. As soon as you put buildings on, it starts looking awesome. So let's go. So let's talk about what I'm looking for when I'm placing my buildings, because I think that this is one of the like kind of under talked about placement locations when you're using a pre-existing battle mat that doesn't have specifically designed locations for your buildings. So the first thing that I look for when I'm setting up something like this, and you'll notice a lot in the time lapse where I'm like kind of like moving a building around and moving a building around and moving a building around, that's because I'm looking for a place where it looks like the threshold of the building was meant to go with the mat. For example, if you look at this door here, you'll see that I made sure to find a place where there was like kind of the broken up cobblestone sidewalk area, that it is going up to both the main door of the building, but also it's going up to this side merchant's door. That way it looks like this building is supposed to be approached from both sides. Another example of this is for this farmhouse that's over on the far side of the mat. I had it be dirt that made its way up, which kind of implies a little bit newer of construction. Maybe they don't have the cobblestone sidewalks put in place for that dwelling yet. Other than that, I always try to make sure to leave some empty space. That'll be for things like markets and little, you know, park groves of trees later. Then I guess the last thing is just make sure it looks cool. Use your eye, use your judgment. Step back from it for a second, look over the whole thing. What needs something? Add something. Don't be afraid to clump buildings together and don't be afraid to keep buildings separate. And eventually you'll end up with something like this and then it'll be time to move on. I think the next thing that I'm gonna do is trees because trees are gonna make this thing super explode with life. Let's jump into that next. So setting up trees is actually very similar to setting up houses. I'm just looking for places where they make sense. Obviously, they would be decorative sometimes. Obviously, there are times where they would just be cut down to be used for timber. Another thing that I try to do is I try to leave one of these park center areas. Is it necessarily totally historically accurate for medieval? Maybe not, but this is medieval fantasy for me, so I can basically do whatever I want, and I think it really breaks up the urban with a little bit of nature, and that makes a more dynamic scene. I mean, I've talked about that in past videos. Other than placing the trees in places where I feel like they belong all across the board, I try to remember to keep them in clumps. And then, of course, my final tip for doing trees is to randomize the colors so you get a lot of interesting visual interest. Interestingly enough, interest. The next thing that I have is this little second open area, and I want to turn that into a market. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to pull out my little tents. I'm going to start setting that area up, and I'm going to also use scatter terrain to make tables and wares so it looks like where people would shop. This actually is a really good time to go into my next and final thing that I'm going to do for this build. I'm going to be setting up a ton of scatter terrain. Scatter terrain is like the last 10% of making the scene look like the scene, but that 10% feels like so much more because the little boxes, the little crates, the little things of food, the little stacks of firewood, those are the things that make a scene like this come to life and feel like it's a real living, breathing place. So that last 10% to me is very, very important. So what I'm going to do is a couple more time lapses of me throwing all that stuff together, and then we'll look at the final result. But after the fun yet arduous task of putting all of the little bits of scatter terrain was complete, I had a finalized board. And I'll tell you, putting stuff out like this makes making all of the terrain so worth it because it just makes such a rush for me to see all of the little pieces come to life in this way. This mat is ridiculous. It's way too big. It is absolutely unfunctional for any type of gaming that I personally do. However, this is the moment. These are the moments where I feel like it's really worth it to have something like this because I really get to flex and show off all of the hard work that I have put into this hobby. There is no possible way that I can show you how awesome this mat turned out in person. I just can't film it in a way that makes it look cool. But what I can do is show you my favorite vignettes from it. I have this really awesome like tavern scene where there's a dwarf who's drunk and a bunch of adventurers are kind of making their way in. I have a nice little scene where there's this crossroads where you can see the signs pointing in different directions. I got to use that cool signpost that I made a few episodes ago as a quick craft, as well as you get to see the little well set up and also the animals and the animal keeper in the back. This little marketplace is my favorite part, I think, of the whole scene. It just really breathes so well, and it feels like it's a real place where everybody is out shopping on a warm, sunny afternoon. And then my last scene that I think maybe is not my favorite, but it's a close second, is this awesome secret surprise Duragar attack that's happening off in the far off corners of the city. And the thing that I like the most about this scene is the fact that if you look everywhere else on the board, it's so calm and content and no one knows what's about to happen. And I like to think that that is not the entire Duragar force. It might actually be a group of bandits or just general evil. However it makes itself known is actually in mass all around this town. And soon everyone is going to have to deal with the threat that is coming. But in this one moment that I set up, in this one specific moment, people don't know what's about to happen yet. It's all about stories. That's the end result of this for me. I make all this stuff specifically because of stories. Storycraft Society, I keep harping on it in my videos lately, but that's what it all comes back to for me. And I have to remind myself sometimes that it's not about the crafting or the painting or the whatever. It's always about the stories. And this basically made me get to tell a whole bunch of stories without crafting anything other than just using the terrain that I already had. So hopefully this inspired you in some way. I enjoyed the heck out of doing this. This was just an absolute blast. But if you like this video, definitely leave me a like down below. Comment, do all the traditional YouTube stuff like subscribe if you haven't. Share this video with a friend. That's the #1 way that you can help a small YouTube channel out. But with all of that said, thank you so much for watching. And until next week, I'll be seeing you. Also, until next week, go pull out all your terrain and set up a super awesome scene. This was so much fun, and everyone who makes terrain should do this every once in a while. Sometimes I forget. See you next week.